hear the beat of the pounding sea. Ride, baby, ride, come and ride with me. Let your feet go easy and free. Sigh, baby, sigh, let me hear you sigh. That's what I'm waiting for. Come on, they're playing our rhythm. Let's keep with that.
Hello! Welcome back to the Court of the Wenton King. And today we are reviewing
The Doors.
The Doors.
By
The Doors.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago we announced the great Wenton giveaway. We're giving away my copy of A Trick of the Tail, which I bought specifically to review it because of the overwhelming response we had to that video and some of the comments. We've had an underwhelming flow of responses to that. Okay, so we've had
one. We've had one entry.
We really appreciate that one. That one did indicate he wasn't actually sure if we were serious.
Yeah.
Deathly serious.
Yeah, this is a real competition, but we prefer it if you haven't heard the album, put it that way. And we want a review of Madman Moon, specifically.
Just the song.
Yeah.
Just the song.
You have one more week. We'll give it another week.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Okay, because obviously Sam didn't like it because you have no feeling.
No.
It doesn't play with feeling.
No, I'm empty inside.
Yes, The Doors then.
Is this the kind of band that you go for, Kev?
But that's the interesting thing, isn't it? This is a bit of a turnaround, isn't it? This is a band Sam knows. I've never listened to a Doors album, believe it or not. That may be surprising. And it is strange, actually. I've seen their performance at the Isle of Wight. I know them, obviously. I know lots of songs on this album. But I've never sat and listened to a Doors album until this week. So that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
When we say I know the Doors, I've listened to the Doors.
So yeah, the Doors. They were on drugs, obviously, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it is excellent. I think it has been suggested that they are more known for their ideals, their life ideals, and being part of the counterculture and all that stuff than they are about their music. That doesn't mean the music isn't good, because obviously they wouldn't have got anywhere without having good music.
Well, there's some similarities between the start, the way the Doors started and the way Pink Floyd started.
Yeah.
In the sense that they were a sort of regular band at a club in Los Angeles. And funnily enough, Frank Zappa's had some pretty bad things to say about Jim Morrison in particular over the years. Where he's taken the mick a little bit.
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, he's also used him as an example of when things were good.
He offered to produce the Doors, apparently, or allegedly, while they're at the band, but they decided to go with the guy who ended up producing them. Yeah, they were a house band that got a record contract in 1967. I'm pretty sure on the back of Sgt. Pepper's, the Beatles went pretty psychedelic.
Yeah.
And the Doors were already doing psychedelic type music, so
stuff like that started to get signed.
Yeah. So I suspect that the fact that they were doing that type of music led to them getting signed, and they had a big hit.
Yeah.
Basically. For my money, this is the best American band of that era.
The Doors are important. They're important culture, but musically, it was all happening over the pond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we're biased.
British invasion was big in America at this time, and they really looked to those guys. And although they sort of definitely have their blues influences, there's also sort of like jazz influence in there. But they're not primarily, they didn't get together to play awesome instrumental music. They were sort of bumming around in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And sort of decided that they were going to make music because Jim Morrison had some pretty decent poetry that he'd written.
Yeah.
And it was born out of that, really. So you get this nice sort of coming together of people to make just to make something.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of parallels with Pink Floyd. Of the same era. It's nowhere near as adventurous as Pink, but at the same time, Pink Floyd didn't really know what they were doing, and a lot of what they played was rubbish. So the Doors didn't do that. They did longer jamming sounds, but they're quite conservative, really, by the standards of what became. But it was bands like that their success which allowed them. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. I was struck by the massive juxtaposition with the band and the vocals. I mean, I don't think Jim Morrison is the talent of the band and the rest of them were a backing band, because I think it's the keyboard player actually did a lot of the writing. So although Jim Morrison wrote the lyrics...
Ray Manzarek.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison was musically illiterate. He couldn't play an instrument. He'd never sung a note. He'd basically written this stuff, and they decided to give it a go. Ray Manzarek was he was a classically trained pianist. They actually started with a couple of other instrumentally. I think it was Manzarek's brother or something like that.
Yeah.
And they eventually moved on. But you got quite a capable mixture of musicians in the end. I mean,
That's the thing.
There was no bass player.
There's no bass player.
No.
So I mean, you could argue, well, that's the same as Led Zeppelin, isn't it? In that the keyboard player plays the bass. But John Paul Jones had bass pedals with the Doors. When he's not playing bass, he's playing keyboard. So his left hand is the bass. So that's...
And it puts a lot of pressure on the drummer as well.
It does, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised that it almost sounds like the vocals are from this era, or even, obviously, he was leading the way, he was very influential, so the vocals sound from 69 and all the stuff that was happening around that time. The band sound like Jerry and the Pacemakers or something. They're from that previous era, There are moments where it's almost like you've got Barney from Napalm Death on vocals and Ringo from 1964 on drums. It's that kind of very strange.
And it's not because actually his vocals are very easy listening almost. It's a very smooth baritone voice, which I love actually. It's very clear, but he manages to suffuse it with a little bit of something that turns it into rock.
Yeah. But I mean, as he got older, his favourite singer was Frank Sinatra, and you can hear that there is a crooningness to his voice. But I think, although it's very affected, it's very natural as well. I don't think he's really thought about it. He's just done it. It's a primal thing coming out, which is cool. I must say, and in a way, it's kind of unfair because of they led the way into other things, but the playing is quite pedestrian. I mean, that's the word you would use, and it's strange that you've got a classically trained pianist and a sort of flamenco-y guitarist. You wouldn't think that listening to it.
Wow.
They sound like they're either drunk and or on drugs, and they were.
Yeah.
So.
And don't forget, this album was recorded in about a week or a week and a half or something like this. So
yeah,
this was
it's all first and second take. Isn't
it? It was songs that they were playing regularly in the club, and they just laid it down.
Yeah, I mean, the guitarist sounds like he should be in Freddie and the Dreamers or something. Not groundbreaking rock music that changed the world. And there's moments when he sounds a bit Santana-y. That's kind of pathetic in comparison. Is that fair? I mean, if that's what they did, that's fair enough, isn't it? And all those bands sounded like that. But the Doors are supposed to be the next stage, and more than that.
And don't forget, he's covering two roles. I mean, there was no rhythm guitarist. It was him doing the guitar, which obviously Jimmy Page with Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I mean,
comfortably. But this is a few years before that.
Yeah, they can't really be influenced by Hendrix yet. So. They're his contemporaries, so
The big thing about the Doors is the mythology around it.
Yeah,
Jim Morrison
exactly.
just turned into a very mythological character.
Yeah, obviously, because
there are lots of stories. It's not entirely clear how much of it is true.
Well, I didn't know, because I don't know that much about them. I mean, I know a bit, obviously, but reading about it, it turns out he didn't get his dick out. It turns out it didn't actually happen. So there must have been something. The establishment were definitely not happy with them because they framed him. They said he'd done something, and there's no evidence that he actually did it.
Yeah, I think
everyone thinks he did it now. So that's mysterious.
And also the sort of mystery surrounding his death. People still claim that they've seen him in airports and
but I mean,
beaches and stuff.
Lots of people look like that. He's generic looking.
What would surprise? I mean, they do definitely bridge the gap. Because when we were growing, when we were young, the Doors was seen as quite a cool band that people who weren't really into music sort of got into.
Well, they've always been a cool band.
Yeah.
I tell you what I was struck by was the amount of footage, high quality colour footage, right the way through their career. Tons and tons and tons of Jim Morrison walking into a crowd signing autographs, them going on stage, them going off stage, them lots of concerts, lots of press conferences. A lot of other bands from 5 or 10 years later, there is nothing. Or there's black and white, and and there was a concerted effort to have a visual impact. They were interested in their image and all that stuff as well, because they had a message, change the world, etc. Or they were just on drugs and drunk too much and didn't do anything. In fact, just made the same album over and over again until he died. One or the other happened.
Interesting band, and we're gonna do a series of.
Let's do 3.
We're gonna do 3 albums.
Okay, right, so first song.
Break On Through.
Break On Through, yep. Obviously classic rock song. Obviously I know this very, very well. It's an opener, isn't it? You should open your concert with Break On Through. Sometimes called Break On Through, bracket To the Other Side, which is a terrible title. Break On Through on its own is a brilliant title, but with that on the end, it's terrible. It was the single, the first single.
Yeah, it was the one that broke.
Which makes more sense than you think. You think it'd be Like My Fire would be the first single, but obviously you reach a song that appeals to the rock fans, and as it grows, then you let out with the big commercial song. So that does make sense. Page and Plant did a little bit of it. It was good. Available on YouTube.
It's an interesting song, yeah. I mean, Manzarek referred to Jim Morrison as the sort of the shaman, is the way he pronounced it. And this is the song that defines that. But it is a very, very catchy, short tune with very strong lyrics, Morrison lyrics.
And fully introduces the whole lyrical concept
in
an accessible song as well, so it's very successful at first.
What they're very good at is presenting what I suppose is pretty serious poetry from Jim Morrison in a very almost a pop sensibility.
Yeah, less so on that one. I mean, that's a rock song, isn't it? But yeah.
Yeah, next track. Kitchen.
Soul Kitchen, yeah. Groovy Baby, very 60s, very much of its time. Everyone knows this song, don't they? And I would think, I think you can imagine the Doors being used as background music to 60s-ness. You would use Soul Kitchen, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think. That's very cool. It has a real charm to it. And you can't not like it, can you? But it strikes me how nearly all the songs I know of the Doors are all on this first album, which is a bit of a worry. Not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah, very, very famous album. Okay, yeah, agreed. Don't need to review that. Don't know what we're going to do next. Crystal Ship.
Classic 60s pop song. There's almost a Joe Meek. Is it a pop song or a ballad?
Yeah, okay. Ballady presentation. But it's quite psychedelic in its sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah?
It is.
A psychedelic ballad.
It's difficult to define that, isn't it? Because I'm saying it sounds more like sort of previous generation of bands, sort of beat band, like Joe Meek type band, things like that. But they kind of define this, so it's very difficult to... It sounds like it's from that era, because it is there.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Crystal Ship.
It's really good.
Yeah, probably not sort of because there's a lot of Doors compilations because obviously they after Jim Morrison died they had to cash in somehow, so they just released endless compilation. The Crystal Ship probably wouldn't appear on that many.
Yeah, I know it, but it's not like Soul Kitchen, is it? So. Yeah.
But it's a good song. It's sort of like if you're gonna look into the Doors. Or go listen to the Doors properly rather than just put on a best of or whatever. It's one of the songs that you're going to find which is a pleasant surprise. Yeah,
I would certainly think you shouldn't do a best of. Like you said, there'll be loads of compilations and that will do them a disservice. Really. You should definitely do the albums.
Okay, track 4, 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, it is a great pop sound. It is a pop song, and that's not disparaging, not a bad thing in any way. People probably sit at home and be offended. I saw a thing on another YouTube video for, I think it was Steve Vai did either Fire or Little Wing, and so obviously a tracked Hendrix fan. And in Fire is where he makes jokes about, he talks about Britney Spears and he talks about pop and say Hendrix could do both.
Yeah. And
there's people in the comments who are offended. Well, it's because you don't play with feeling. That's why you think it's pop. Hendrix can do pop, and that's good. And remember, the 60s is the best pop, obviously from the 60s. So yeah, that's good. I like it.
The Beatles is pop music.
It is not.
Hendrix was pop music.
Yeah, it is not subversive. The lyrics probably are. The music is not subversive at all, but that's fine because it's good.
Okay, yeah, Alabama song.
This is very famous, this one. Bowie did this on the stage tour. Needs more euphonium, but it's that kind of thing. Yeah, very entertaining, really, really cool.
Yeah. We're coming to a famous one now.
Yeah, Light My Fire, everyone knows is the single. It's not, it's not like with some bands like Paranoid and Smoke on the Water, where it feels like a cheapened version of their sound, and everything else has got more sophistication than what is obviously the single. A lot of this is poppy actually, and some of Light My Fire is less poppy than some of the other songs. It's just a song they wrote, isn't it? It has a jam in the middle, although the jam is really just a keyboard solo, a little bit of an arthritic keyboard solo. It's a bit, But that's okay, and if you're on drugs, that would take you places. It doesn't really go anywhere, so it doesn't take you places unless you're not on drugs. But obviously it's a great song.
This is the one that was written by the guitarist, the lyrics.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. He's made some out of that.
Yeah, and it was also the one, because there was a recent court battle between, well, they shouldn't sell their song for use in a car advert, and
yeah, I do know this. Yeah,
and it was Come On Buick, Light My Fire or something like that. And John Denham sort of said Jim Morrison was quite clear we shouldn't do that and we should honour that.
Well, when he was alive, Jim Morrison obviously didn't bother making albums and went off wandering off doing drugs. And they were going to do it. They had this car advert. They were putting their music on, and Jim Morrison came back from on holiday and said, "Oh no, we're not doing that." Ruined it for him. But he's probably right. He's probably would have done damage.
Yeah. I mean, it gives them a little bit of integrity. That sort of not selling.
Had they done that in the '60s, their image now would not have done what it did.
Although apparently one of their songs has been used in the UK. Tyre advert, Michelin or Firestone or something like that.
Oh really?
It might be Firestone. That's the only time. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very recognisable track. Next track, Backdoor Man.
A bit more bluesy this one. If you listen to the album for the first time and you realise they're actually a blues band, aren't they? So that's cool. There's a strange quote. I think it was right, like at the peak of their fame. I think it was the guitarist, might be the keyboard player, who said people are talking about a merging of jazz and rock, and if that's happening, well, that's us then. And I've thought about that, and the reasoning behind that statement is that he's on drugs. Because they're not. Okay, it's nonsense. They're a blues band, and that's cool.
Yeah, he's Backdoor Man.
Yeah.
Can I say anything about that? No. Okay, next track, I Looked at You.
Yeah, very, very 60s beat group, kind of Freddie and the Dreamers kind of song. To me, that could be recorded in 1964. I haven't listened to the lyrics, so I don't know, but you know.
I looked at you, etc.
But I like 60s beat groups, so that's good.
Yeah. End of the Night.
At the end of the night. 50s sci-fi movie kind of stuff, maybe? Do you think so?
In the... I don't know. 50s, sci-fi.
Put it on. Think. You know, theremin. It needs a theremin. Yeah.
Okay, maybe 50s. I can see what you're saying. This is a sort of the psychedelic, very dreamy, almost surreal. There is a very strong.
The very light side. You know, it's not Interstellar Overdrive or something. It's a song they would have played on TV.
Yeah, I think that's what they did. So while they sort of merged surrealism and pop and made surrealism presentable to mainstream, which Pink Floyd really struggled with at this point.
They did. Yeah, they really did. Yeah, I mean, Piper is obviously it's held as whatever it is, but it is ridiculous. And if you played someone Bike in 1967, everybody would laugh, as they do now.
And this the way that the Doors do it has more legs than the way Syd Barrett Floyd did. I mean, you imagined 5 albums Piper getting Dawn.
Some people would obviously that's a what if for a lot of people, but not for us.
Syd Barrett was a very, very different, unique individual, but there's only so much of that you take. It needed development, didn't it?
Yeah, but we'll find out if that's true with the Doors as well.
Yeah. I like End of the Night. It's one of my favourite tracks on the album.
Cool.
I like the surreal stuff. That was my key into the.
Oh really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I
didn't know it.
Next track, Take It As It Comes. Now, this is really 60s.
Yeah, very, very 60s. Very Jermique, as I said before, that beat groupiness, but it has a rockness to it as well. It's very 1967, you know, it is of that year.
What I do like about it is the Doors saying, I'm not a big fan of Manzarek. I actually think he's a bit of a car salesman, he's dead now, he's definitely very aware of what he's saying and why he's saying it, but musically, he has a very, he has one sound. Yeah.
I know, it just does that.
But it works, it doesn't get tiring where, we've reviewed sort of Rick Wakeman, and in his more exuberant moments, it gets a little bit.
Yeah, that all sounds the same, just as much, doesn't it?
Yeah. But this
really is all.
Kind of melts into the background.
Yeah, but that's the sound of the Door.
Yeah.
You need to be recognisable if you do that. Then.
I mean, you need this little buffer of a pop
easy
track.
Yeah.
To between this and then the final song.
Yeah, which is for me, it's obviously the best thing on it. It's the extended jam. The sound of the Doors, as we were saying, is on this song. This is now today. If you're going to hear the Doors for the first time, that's the song you listen to. Right? And it's obviously, I mean, I used the word pedestrian, which was very harsh with the band, but they do what they do, and the effects of the sound are mostly it's about his voice and sort of all the effect of that. And it is really good. It is a really good extended psychedelic jam. I'm assuming it'll be my favourite track by the end of the 3 albums.
I think it's got to be everyone's favourite Doors track at the end of the day.
Yeah, I blocked out the lyrics because this is all the Oedipus stuff, isn't it? Is it this one?
Yeah.
So I didn't listen to the lyrics. I just heard the sounds and did that.
Yeah, actually, it's a very, very good song. It's in Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm.
Very apt track for that film. In fact, they were going to do all the music for Eclipse Now.
Yeah, they did albums after he died.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of controversy over that because went to Paris to chill out and just write poetry and sort of redefine himself. And there's a guy out there who claims he had a contract with Jim Morrison to record poetry onto album.
Right. Yeah.
He was going to play a little bit of music and Jim Morrison was going to speak his poems. When he died, the Doors, allegedly,
when he died,
just took ownership of these lyrics and these recordings.
Really?
And played music to it. And so whenever you hear Manzarek and on the doing interviews or whatever, it was he just went to Paris. The agreement was he was always going to Paris and he was going to come back and record more albums. We were getting ready to record more albums because that was the agreement.
Yeah, he also sat down on stage and decided, I'm not singing. So I think he stopped.
So it's interesting, yeah. That all feeds into this mythology. I mean, they're very. He was inspired by mythology, Morrison.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of. It's very. The so many books, there's so many documentaries, there's so many opinions on YouTube about it that it's very hard to pick any fact
that is
about
actually
the
a fact.
Doors that is actually a fact.
And that's intentional right from the start. You can tell that everything he did, and there's a lot of pretending he doesn't care, whilst being very, very clever about his image and what he does. And
I mean, he was a very good showman.
yeah, but I think his voice is what carries all of it above the writing. It's the sound of his voice is the most important.
And he was very unsure about his voice.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It was sort of, can I do this? I agree, actually. When you consider what was coming in terms of Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, stuff like that, it's the polar opposite.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, when Led Zeppelin first started, there was talk of, well, Robert Plant, he's just ripping off Jim Morrison. I don't hear that at all. They're very different.
I think its attitude, the image that Robert Plant wanted to portray, I think is a lift from Jim Morrison, sort of the
His
stage
image.
presence.
Yeah, his image rather than the singing, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean, Plant in the early days obviously didn't see the lyrics as very important because he nicked them, obviously, so it's important. But obviously, with Jim Morrison, it was the lyrics, and they'll have to play music as well.
So yeah, that's the first album.
That's the first album. See you! We'll be seeing you
Next week.
So thank you very much. See you next week for
The next album in the Doors.
which is called...
I can't remember.
Yes, and don't forget to submit your review of Madman Moon.
In order to win this.
Yeah, that's not a joke.
Yeah.
Okay, see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.